Mayor's Trophy comes to Columbia West, and everybody rejoices. Hello again, everybody. Welcome to Tiger Sidelines. I'm Bo Bayman, joined as always by the St. Louis Post-Dispatch's Dave Matter and Power Mizzou's Gabe DeArmond. Welcome to Tiger Sidelines after a 34-14 victory for the Missouri Tigers, and the Tigers score in many different ways. A couple of defensive scores. The offense did enough, and in a game that we said could turn the season, the Tigers got what they needed. Most importantly, didn't matter how it happened, they got the victory.
Ugly at times for the offense, but when Missouri's defense scores as many touchdowns as not only West Virginia, but Missouri's offense,
right,
you're going to have a pretty good day, and they did. They were never really challenged, especially after the Perkins touchdown. They looked like had the makings of a complete team if the offense is a little bit better.
And the offense had been better in previous weeks, and it's one of the things that we noticed. I thought Kelly Bryant was just a little off on Saturday.
Oh, I thought he was more than a little off. I thought Ryan Helinski was awful in the first half, and Kelly Bryant was trying to match him. I mean, and Odom said after the game he thought it was playing South Carolina. He knows a lot of those guys. He was just a little too amped up. Now, give Bryant credit. I think the difference between a fifth-year senior and a freshman is he settled down.
Right.
Yeah.
And Helinski never did. But, I think we always want to see, if offenses don't play well, we call it an ugly game, and that may be true, but when the offense hasn't played well, Barry Odom's never won. Yeah. Like, he was 5-19 coming into this year when they didn't score 40. They've now won 2 games in a row where they didn't score 40. This offense, it wasn't great, but I think that's a good sign that the offense was average and you won by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, so the Tigers win. They moved to 3-1 on the year, and more importantly, 1-0 in the SEC. And when you talk about 3 things that were up, Ronell Perkins, Cale Garrett, who got the SEC Defensive Player of the Week, and really, I thought the defensive line played pretty well.
Right, defensive line, I thought the safeties were great, Gillespie and Josh Bledsoe. Missouri has to nominate somebody for Defensive Player of the Week. I don't know if Garrett was necessarily the best choice. I mean, he kind of fell on a ball. He was smart to fall on it, but I thought what Perkins did was a big accomplishment too, and I thought those 2 safeties just made so many plays.
I thought Tyree Gillespie was the best player on the field, and I think that's the biggest difference from Wyoming. I looked it up yesterday. Those 2 combined missed 4 tackles in the Wyoming game. They've missed 1 since.
There you go.
They've been all over the field. The defensive line, compared to last year, the starting defensive line, the pressure's up about 50%. And it's guys, Chris Turner, finally you're seeing him actually make plays. Jordan Elliott's been as advertised, and I think Kobe Whiteside's been the best one of them all. It's
interesting, too, when you're in the stadium and not watching TV, that first touchdown, nobody had any idea what happened. I wish they would put it on a replay or something, that it was a double pass. Came back to him, he caught it, and then threw it backwards, which was the fumble. Nobody knew anything until they said touchdown.
We couldn't tell, and I haven't watched the replay. I still don't really know if he caught the ball. But people watching on TV thought
he held it long enough to where I think you could say he had control, because he really did throw it. Now, if he just went like that, that's one thing, but he really did throw it. Cale seemed to notice. Nobody else did. I think Ryan Walters did. He was really gesturing touchdown on the sideline. The officials didn't even know what down it was.
Right. They almost replayed second down. We almost got 5 downs again, but Khalil Oliver said after the game, he was on the opposite corner, and he's like, I was sprinting and screaming, pick it up, but nobody else was. It just laid there.
That was a big play, obviously, but Ronell Perkins, South Carolina goes in and scores there. It's a 3-point game, and it's a completely different game. He houses it from 100 yards, and virtually on that play, the game was over.
I think until that play, I think everybody watching is like, they're really going to do this again. Right? They're going to dominate South Carolina for 3 quarters and lose. And, I'm trying to remember. I think maybe another time we've seen a game against South Carolina change on a 100-yard interception return.
Yeah, no doubt. They like to do that against the Gamecocks with Marcus King, and anytime you get to mention Shreveport, it's not a bad day. But that obviously turned the game. It was such a huge play, and he said, I could have run 300 yards more. He was just that excited. He wasn't tired, and nobody was catching.
You want to give him credit, but he did throw it right to him. I could just not see him. And if he didn't get it, I think Cale Garrett could have intercepted. He was right there too. Now Cale said he probably only could have made it about 30 yards because he's not as fast. But still, what a moment. I mean, this defense, there's been times in the last couple of years where they do get backed up on that goal line and they find a way to respond, and that's so clutch for any team. If you can go into a game and you have to punt and it's not the end of the world, you have the makings of a pretty good team. You can punt pretty well with McCann and play good defense. You're going to win some games, and it looks like this team could be like that.
And I think the guy that deserves credit for that play is Ryan Walters. I mean, everybody likes to say, the scheme is bad when a guy doesn't make a play. Like, the scheme is designed to do exactly what it did. Put Ronell Perkins in position where Ryan Helinski doesn't see him and throw that ball right to him. Same thing happened with Nick Bolton against West Virginia. If Perkins drops that ball and South Carolina scores, there are going to be people saying Ryan Walters' defense isn't any good. No, it did exactly what it was supposed to do, and then Perkins made the play.
We're kind of all over the place here, but let's go back to the offense a little bit, especially early. I thought the offensive line was getting beat in some ways we haven't seen since Wyoming. We did see it a little bit at Wyoming, but they were getting beat up pretty good in the trenches.
Just giving the ball to the running backs wasn't working. Now, it started working out with some of the zone read stuff when Kelly Bryant would keep it and get big chunk yards. They stayed with the run, though. I thought that was important because they ran it better in the third and fourth quarter. I think they wore them down a little bit. But you're right. They kind of was forcing Bryant to make some longer throws because they weren't getting a whole lot on first and second down. And he was shaky throwing the ball.
Yeah, a lot of things, as Gabe mentioned, may have been amped up because usually when you're amped up, the ball sails, and that's what it was doing. And he threw behind a couple of guys. I mean, people were yelling at the receivers. I was like, that's not the receivers.
Yeah, well, they had open guys that he was missing. Now, two things. First of all, Yasir Durant doesn't play, and it obviously had an impact. I mean, your best offensive lineman doesn't just impact that one position. And I can only speak for people at this table, but we are done asking questions about injuries because it's lies.
Yeah.
I mean, flat out twice last week, Barry Odom told us he was playing. And he did. So we're done with that. But the other thing I think is we knew there was going to come a time where they were going to say, all right, Kelly, you got to run the ball. Like, this is how we're going to win the game. And he, at halftime, was on pace for a career high in carries. Now, he didn't get it because they stretched it out a little bit, but I was glad to see that obviously the first 3 weeks they were just telling him, hold back a little bit, and they took those reins off.
And only a couple of those were scrambles. Those are mostly design calls, and a lot of them worked. I mean, right up the middle. He's a tough runner, too, and he bounces off defenders, which you worry about long term, but, man, it worked for him.
And at some point, like, if he gets hurt, he gets hurt, but you got a game you got to win.
Yeah, no question. Let's talk about the other side here. How good is South Carolina?
They've got players.
They're all right.
I mean, I think part of their issue, and this without knowing being in the locker room, they had such a tough schedule this year. It almost seemed like maybe they were beaten before the year began because that was all anybody wanted to talk about.
They were definitely beaten after week one.
And then you lose to North Carolina, and, man, you get a tough game against Alabama that you get all up for, and you're still like 23, 27 points, behind them. That's tough.
But here's the other thing. A lot of the people now who are saying South Carolina isn't, and these are Missouri fans. Well, South Carolina is not any good. A week ago, it was, oh, man, they were tied with Alabama almost at halftime, and they're really good. Like, it can't be both.
Yep, absolutely. So Missouri goes into the bye week after 4 weeks. Everybody says this. Every coach will say it. Oh, it comes at a perfect time.
They get two this year.
Yeah. Does this one come at a good time? I think it doesn't because you're kind of riding momentum here.
No bye weeks come at a good time for Missouri.
I think it's good when you just got shellacked and you've got a bunch of guys hurt and you can maybe on the road and now you can just go home and regroup and disappear for a while. But when you're playing pretty well, I think you want to play the next week. It's not like they've got a ton of injuries, but it is what it is. They can't change it at this point. You got to make the most out of it.
I think they could work on something this week, Gabe, to where this is one of those times where they have a little extra time to get ready for a game. And in Barry Odom's tenure, they haven't done that
Hasn't
well.
worked.
And so maybe do something different.
And he talked about they are doing it differently. They're approaching it as if they play Saturday. Right. Like it's not 3 days off this week. The practices will be a little shorter, but they are changing it. But look, more important than the bye week is the next two games are Troy and Ole Miss at home. It shouldn't matter if you've had 4 byes or no byes. This team should be 5-1 3 weeks from now.
Absolutely. All right, as we look around the SEC, big wins for LSU had a big win. And how about Florida? Florida came through. I mean, you're kind of seeing the separation at the top of each division.
Florida won by 31 points, and I don't think they played that great. I mean, I think it says more about Tennessee, but Florida's at the point now where if they're in a matchup they should win, it looks like they're good enough to do it.
It wasn't an SEC game, but Georgia with a nice win against Notre Dame. And that was a great game to watch.
Yeah, I actually thought Notre Dame probably came out of that having earned more than Georgia did.
Right.
Notre Dame played well enough that if they could continue to win, they're not necessarily out of the playoff picture, because for years and years, Notre Dame, they can't compete with the elite team. They competed. I mean, they were there.
On the road as well, and that's what got them. Now, on the other side, you have Arkansas loses a home non-conference game. Ole Miss loses a non-conference game. I mean, the bottom of this conference is...
I mean, at least Ole Miss lost to somebody you've heard of.
Right.
Like, I legitimately think Arkansas might be bad enough that Chad Morris might be in trouble after 2 years.
Well, because they're not getting any better.
Right.
If anything, they're getting worse. I mean, Brett Bielema, things kind of tailed off under him. They were never this bad. They were never close to this bad. I mean, San Jose State's been one of the worst FBS teams in the country for a while, and that game wasn't close either. I mean, the score got a little closer at the end, but it wasn't that competitive.
And another game that we talked about last week, Auburn at Texas A&M. Could Auburn go and win? And they sure did.
I think Auburn's really good. They're the third best team in that division, probably.
Yeah.
But I also think A&M's exactly what A&M's been for 90 years.
Yeah.
Like, this is the year. No, this really isn't the year. Like, yeah, they kind of competed with Clemson a little. Both the Clemson and Auburn games, really, the score looks a lot closer. They never had any chance to win either of those.
I also think A&M gets way too much credit as being a tough place to play. They've got a lot of people there, but when have they beaten a team at home that is much better than them? I mean, maybe when Alabama, they had Johnny there, but I mean, Auburn just walked in there and controlled that game.
And Missouri's gone in there a couple of times back in the Big 12 days and had no problem with Kyle Field and the 12th man. Around the country, we talked about Notre Dame making waves. Not really too many other upsets. The biggest game probably was Wisconsin beating Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, Jim Harbaugh might be in some trouble. It's such a weird year where right now the top two teams, and I actually don't think Alabama's the second best team in the country, but Clemson has such an awful schedule that the number one team in the country, nobody's going to pay attention to them until the ACC championship game.
Isn't that the
Like, I
truth?
forgot they played.
So did most people.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. So this week with the bye week, it's just kind of heal up, and they're probably working on classwork too.
Yeah, get healthy, and you can't have a letdown. Like, this team is still, they've won 3 in a row, yeah. They can lose to Troy. They can lose to Ole Miss. And Barry's got to remind them of that. A lot of these guys have never, I don't know if they've ever been on really long winning streaks or really feeling good about themselves or multiple wins already against Power 5 teams this early in the season. They've done them in November when nobody's paying attention. But now they're going to get a little bit more publicity and just a little more attention. You got to tamp that down a little bit if you're Barry.
But don't you guys agree what Saturday did for me, when you look at the rest of the schedule now, we are back to what I thought preseason. You shouldn't have lost to Wyoming. This is a disappointment if you don't win 9 games. I'm not going to say failure, but this team now should go 9-3.
At the worst.
Yeah.
At the absolute worst. Absolutely. We'll see what you guys think on the old tweet machine. We'll take a break. The Twitter segment is coming up. You're watching Tiger Sidelines right here on MC22. Welcome back, everybody. This is Tiger Sidelines, and you're watching on MC22. Gabe DeArmond, Dave Matter, and I'm Bo Bayman. We are at Tiger Sidelines on Twitter, and thanks for the tweets this week. We start off with Eric saying third down percentage this season offensively isn't pretty.
I honestly don't know what it is.
I haven't looked. Some of their turnovers have been on third down. The Beatty fumble the other day was third down, and I think the Bryant interception might have been, or was one of his earlier interceptions. Those are worse than anything. But when you've got a good punter and a good defense, you can live with a possession that doesn't do it.
I do think maybe this team's kind of starting to figure out, hey, maybe we don't have to score 45 to win. Maybe if we punt sometimes at our own 40, it's okay.
Right.
At our own 40 and pin them, which they've been able to do with Tucker
Right,
McCann this year. A lot of you are really, really concerned about the beer sales. How much did we sell in booze the last 2 games? I missed it if you already said. One thing that I did not know, the money from the booze is going to an enhancement if you
Install
will.
metal detectors, which the SEC is saying it has to do.
by 2020. Yeah.
So there'll be metal detectors next year as you walk in.
I can tell you my son and his 2 roommates were at the game and accounted for 6 beers. So Missouri sold at least 6 beers last. I don't know, I don't know why it matters.
we could keep score every week. I just haven't been inclined to do it.
Are they serving beer in the press box again, or was
No,
that okay?
I think.
Just checking. Bart says, please pass along if there's a bowl ban. After the 6th win, market every game following like it's a bowl game. Put together home and away packages. Use social media like it's a bowl game. Even the team should hype it that way. I'd rather go to Athens than Orlando anyhow.
Well, I don't know what you plan to do, Dave, but when I find out whether the bowl ban is lifted or not, I'm not telling anybody. I'm just going to keep it to
Well,
myself.
you've known for 3 weeks, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm
Just whenever you want to tell people.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm going to plan that release for maximum impact on Power Mizzou.
I mean, yes, Athens is better than Orlando. Is
Yes.
is Little Rock?
Yeah, probably not. They say the most improvement occurs between game 1 and game 2. You might apply this to the 2019 Tigers run game. MU got dominated in Laramie. MU coaching adjustments now, or did the Matsy nutritionist make run blocking sandwiches?
Well, you know what they say? They say the biggest improvement happens after whenever you lose.
Right.
Like, we hear all this time, the freshman to sophomore jump. And then coaches will say all the time, I mean, he's been here 2 years. We think he's really ready to take that.
Sure.
That's all,
Yeah, but they didn't run it great, against South Carolina. So I don't think it's.
But they kept doing.
They kept doing it, and that's fine. It's good enough. Wyoming, it was turnovers. I mean, the running game wasn't good enough, but they would have won that game had not turned it over when they did.
It was a running back who scored it, so I remember the play vividly. The Tyler Beatty touchdown, that screen was well designed. I mean, as soon as he caught it, you could see it was going to be a
Well,
score.
and you've got big Trevor Wallace-Sims blocking one guy at the point of attack and then jumping out and diving to block another guy on the screen was really impressive.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, who would win the helmet race between the Mizzou beat writers? How much longer do you think we'll be able to hold on to Dooley? And are you starting to believe in the DNs?
As far as the helmet race, I think 40 would win it.
He's got longer stride.
He's got long legs. He's young. He's in shape. Not so.
21-year-old Dave would have given it a run. I don't know about 41-year-old Dave.
Dooley's interesting to me. I think if he has a good year with a new quarterback and a different system, I think he'll have a chance to be a head coach. Now, will it be at a level where he wants to do it? I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know Derek Dooley well enough to know what he
He
wants.
could go to Tennessee. No, I'm just
I mean, what a Power 5 job, though. I think if it's a good Power 5 job, they're not going to look at Missouri. They're going to look at Tennessee and be like, oh, no, we're not hiring that guy.
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
But I don't think he'll get a Power 5 head
Right.
coaching job.
He's already done
Does he
the
want to
group
go
of
back
five.
to the group of 5?
And it was tough. He
Yeah.
didn't like that.
Or-
There's a lot of work for not much reward.
Or what happens if Jim Harbaugh calls? And says,
That's the possibility.
What if one of these elite teams wants an offensive coordinator?
Do you want to make $1.2 million to come here and win a national championship? Absolutely. I think that's probably the more. Now again, we're just speculating, but I think that seems more reasonable than a head coaching job.
And now are you guys starting to buy into the DNs?
They're better than I thought they would be. Chris Turner is actually showing up, and I was surprised yesterday. Trey Williams, who does not have a sack, actually leads the team in pressures and quarterback hits. So and they're getting there. And remember, the guy that we thought was the best one hasn't played, and frankly, who knows if he ever will play.
Yeah, who knows?
The Wyoming loss. Just how much has that, or will it hurt Mizzou national perception for this year and maybe next year? What would Mizzou have to do to make this go away?
Not next year.
Well, and I don't know if it's hurting with the national perception that much because I just listened to a bunch of national podcasts after that loss. The takeaway was that's a tough place to play. Weird game, on the road. I think more locally and local fans, it's hurting them more. I mean, I don't know if national people even remember that was the loss.
But it's hurting from this standpoint. If they had won that game, assuming everything else goes the same, which you can't assume, they're 4-0 and they're probably 15th in the country right now. And let's say, their next 4 games they should win. And if they do, they're 8-0 going to Georgia and 7th or 8th. Now, they're not going to be quite that high, but they still have a chance to work themselves back into the top 15-ish by the time they get to Georgia.
Right, and with the rankings, you can be ranked with a bad loss as long as you have good wins. They just don't have good national wins that are going to catch anybody's attention for now.
And I'm not sure they have a lot of chances. That's the difference between this team and, was it 14 that they lost to Indiana? That team had some games that they came back and won that kind of turned people's heads. I mean, Missouri could get 7 weeks into the season, and South Carolina still might be the best win.
And interestingly, the team can't look to Georgia. I mean, they know that's out there.
Oh, they're
but
not
they
good enough to
can't
do that.
That's right. They are not good enough to do that, and they have to go week by week.
We can, though.
Yeah, well, of course we can.
You know.
And you know what else we can do? We can talk about KU. Thoughts on what will actually happen to KU when it's all said and done?
This one's hard to predict. There's a lot of new dynamics here at play. Like they're trying. It does appear that they're trying to make this a kind of a test case with some of the new rules, the new regulations, and they want to respond to the FBI case. This is the first big, huge case. Now, North Carolina State already got some stuff too, but not like this.
It also appears that KU is, I don't know if they learned from Missouri or this is what they always would have done, but Bill Self came out firing last night. He's like, we're fighting this. It's all made up. I mean, not exactly, but, this is not true. KU's not going to help the NCAA find anything. And the weird part about this is it all could, from everything I'm reading, come down to kind of a technicality of, do they deem the Adidas guy a booster or not a booster? To me, it shouldn't matter if he's a booster. He was doing what he did. Like, that doesn't really seem in dispute. And if the entire argument to get out of it is, well, we didn't know, I mean, who believes that?
Yeah, right. The notice of allegations was released, and it looks like it's level 1 infractions. Lack of institutional control. They went after Bill Self with one of those go after the coach penalties. So there's a lot out there, but this isn't going to be, as we well know here in Missouri, it's not going to be decided next week. This is going to drag on.
And it won't impact this coming season unless Kansas should come out and say, hey, we'll just take a postseason ban now. And there's no implication they're going to do that by any means.
No way.
I won't be surprised 12 months from now, though, if Bill Self's in the NBA.
Yeah.
Will he coach? He'll coach this
coach
year
this
and then
year.
jump?
And then I could see him laughing from the bench in San Antonio for $7 million a year as the next coach cleans up the mess.
Good. He's proud enough and loyal enough. I could see him wanting to fight this out longer, unless he gets the inclination. Hey, this is a fight that's not worth fighting at this point.
Losing battle.
Right.
Yeah. Thanks for all those tweets. We're at Tiger Sidelines before, during, after any game, and there's no game this weekend, so I guess before the next game. We'll need him for next week. We'll take a break. When we come back, another title for Jaden Cox. We'll talk about it. You're watching Tiger Sidelines on MC22. Welcome back, everybody. This is Tiger Sidelines. Dave, Gabe, and Bo here. And Jaden Cox is really leaping everybody to be the most decorated Mizzou alum on the athletic scale. He wins at 202.5 pounds, the 2019 Wrestling World Championships. He won 4-0 in the finals, and in the whole championship didn't give up a point.
Incredible. He's getting better. Is he getting better?
I think so.
Yeah.
And I don't know how at this point you put anybody in his class as far as people who have been at Mizzou. Who?
Isn't it? I think it's 4 high school state championships, 3 NCAA championships, now 2 world championships. He's also got 2 bronzes in the worlds. So Jaden Cox, and it's a good thing for Brian Smith and his program because he can say, there you go.
Yep.
That's what we produced. And from right here.
Same with Hickman and whoever their wrestling coach might be.
No
I'm
question
not going to
about it.
pretend to know.
Are we going to take the show on the road for the Olympics next year?
To Tokyo, we should. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think,
Got that in the budget.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk to the bosses. The volleyball team, we told you last week they had to play 2 ranked teams. Well, they lost both of those. They lost to number 5 Baylor 3-0, and they lost to number 13 Hawaii 3-2. The Tigers are now 8-2 on the season. They host Kentucky on Sunday. They'll travel to LSU on Wednesday, October 2nd. And if I'm not mistaken, I think I saw they just dropped a couple of spots to number 19 this week. But, I mean, they went to Baylor, lost there. Hawaii's always good, and you lost in a 5-setter. Shows you what you have to gear up for as you want to make the postseason.
Maybe that undefeated record was a little inflated by the schedule, and now reality hits. But they're still going to be right there all season.
Absolutely. Soccer tied Ole Miss 1-1. The team is now 6-2-1. They will host Georgia on Sunday. It's pups in the pitch day, so
sounds fun.
Yeah, you can bring your.
I think they should get to play.
That would be awesome.
Like the Puppy Bowl or whatever.
By the way, Mizzou Cross Country in the city of Columbia going to unveil the new Gans Creek Cross Country course dedication on September 27th. That's something that the city has worked with Mizzou. It's something that's actually pretty cool that they're doing.
You can host state championships there and conference meets. It's a great story for the city.
Couple of football games. Mizzou obviously not playing this week. You got number 18, Virginia at Notre Dame. You got USC at Washington. You got Ohio State at Nebraska. I believe that's where College Game Day is, right? And Mississippi State's going to be at Auburn. It's not a sterling schedule.
At some point, there are good games this year, right?
I
I haven't seen very many of them yet.
Maybe this is the problem. You've got like 4 super teams,
right?
Yeah.
I think you're already down to like 7 teams could win a national title, and everybody else is just kind of out here messing around.
If Missouri continues to win, could game day be at Missouri, Georgia?
I think it's a possibility. Georgia might
Depends
have some.
on what else. I mean, like if LSU, Alabama play that week,
Right.
no.
And they were just at Georgia, so you know they may want to go somewhere different.
What about for Missouri, Tennessee? I feel like that'll be a big one.
How about Missouri, Arkansas?
That's the problem with not playing anybody any good at home. Like you don't really have a chance to get something like that.
And that's why the SEC Nation saw that West Virginia and said,
Yep,
let's
better
go
go
there
there now.
Let's get that one over with.
Virginia's 1-0. This is a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. That's going to do it for this edition of Tiger Sidelines. For Bill and Matt behind the scenes, Brian, get well soon. That's Gabe DeArmond. That's Dave Matter. I'm Bo Bayman. Thanks so much for watching. As always, this has been Tiger Sidelines on MC22.